Hi, welcome to the Space Bin website. This is a video toolbox to help you change components on a space bin. Hopefully ending the confusion and making your job easier. Today we're going to go out and change an actuator on a machine that's seized. Although you may get out there and change an actuator that's not seized, so it may change depending on the situation. There's also a video of a working actuator that you can go and have a look at. We're going to go through the tools that you need to do the job we're doing today. No matter what it is, you'll need these tools. So there'll be some cable ties, zip ties, holding the wires around the actuator. The actuator is held in with a pin and circlip situation. So you need both types. Depending on where the pin's at on the actuator, it might be not accessible with a straight pair, so you need a 90-degree pair. Some diags, side cutters to get the old cable ties off. Small block of wood and a G-clamp. This is to clamp around the post to hold the weight of the pressing plate. Tape measure, preferably one that locks on. If not, you should be able to work around it. A number 2 Phillips and a number 3 Phillips. Load strap, ratchet strap. Not a big one, not the big 2.5 tonners, just a small one. This is about a 500 kilo. The hooks are a better size for what we're trying to do. Now you may have to take this top hat assembly off. I'm not tall enough to get to the screws on top of it, so I need a ladder or some sort of step. You may need that also. That'll have to be for you to decide. Before we start working on the machine, we need to secure it. So we want to turn these stops, push these stops in, stop the power, put your brakes on. Just a couple of wheels, put the brakes on, just stop it from rolling around. Push the other stop in, turn your key off. Want to disconnect it from the mains power. Pretty much do this every time we work on something, just to be sure. We've already taken the back off, but you'll need to remove that. So there's a number of screws that Paul will be focusing on now, up the side and across the top, that you'll need to remove. I've already done it, obviously. In this case, we're going to have to take the top hat off. And the reason for that is the pin we want to get to is up in here. Now, if this cage were right down, the pin was looking at you, you wouldn't have to take that hat off, it wouldn't matter. So, same thing, I've already taken most of the screws out of it, just to speed things up. There's a couple, one on each side here, there's a couple in the front, there's 4 across the top here, but you'll see all that when you climb up here. Now this model here has a little spacer under the door stopper. Yours probably won't, this was a prototype. So. Ladder out of the way. And the top hat you should just be able to lift off, not real heavy. Put it aside somewhere. And as I mentioned, this is where the pin is, so we couldn't get access to it the way it was. I've already taken the circlips off one side of the pins, top and bottom. Now you need your diags. We want to disconnect the actuator first. So get rid of that zip tie. There's probably going to be a couple on there. Disconnect your Anderson connections. Important when you put these back together, the corresponding colors go with each other. Red to red, black to black. We'll leave that hanging there. Now we're going to get a block of wood, clamp, strap. So in this case, the actuator is seized while it's been pressing. So there's rubbish in the bin. So there's upward pressure on this. So this pin is tight. You can't move it. So we've got to get rid of that pressure somehow. So we need to pull this whole assembly together. Now the easiest way we found was, like I said, something that most people have. In this case, a ratchet strap. So we'll get the ratchet strap in place. So we go over the top of the cage. You can have your strap whatever way suits you. Now I'm going to go around the bottom bolt on the cage with, I've got a hook on this. A lot of them have a keeper hook like that. So around that bolt. Just put a little bit of tension just to, so it stays there. Make sure your hooks are all secure. Now the block of wood and the clamp are to go around here. This assembly at the moment is sitting on something, so it probably won't go anywhere when we take this pin out. But we put the block of wood around it regardless, because if there isn't anything under it and you somehow get that pin out, the whole thing will come crashing down. If you've got a finger in the way, it'll, you know, do some damage, and we don't need that. So this is just a security thing. Put the block on this side so it's a bit easier to see. Just leave a bit of space between the wood and your actuator. As such. That should be fairly tight. This assembly isn't really heavy, probably about 40 kilos, I suppose. So, but heavy enough. I said if it falls, it'll do some damage. So we've got that secure. We've got our strap in place. We've got our circlips off, all disconnected. Now, the whole idea, like I said, is this is trying to push upwards, so we've got to try and pull it down. So we start taking some weight up on this strap. Now, as you can see, I've taken enough weight now, that pin's loose. So we just want to push the pin. Don't push the pin through your finger, because if you go through and something happens and it slips up, you take the end of your finger off. So once you push the pin through flush like that, gives you something to get a hold of on the back. There we go. And then just let your strap go. So once that's done, we can now get the pin out of the bottom of the actuator. Oops. So that's what we've got here. Get up here somewhere safe. Now at the moment, because of our situation, this whole thing's being pulled together where it needs to be. This thing is secure. When I let this go, this will float up and down. So what we want to do is we want to let this go, and you watch this thing jump up once I let the pressure off. Now we still want to leave our strap around this to use again. But what I'd like to do is push this down. See how that's just floating up and down? So if you just put your foot on him, you can hold him down. Now we need to get a measurement between this pin and the bottom pin. And it's probably better, like I said, to hold the bottom cage down. It keeps everything where it needs to be. This measurement does it. It only has to be close because, and I'll show you why when we do it. I don't know. I'm going to call it about 1230. So 1230. You can let that go. But when we come back, we'll be able to move that up and down or do whatever we need to do. Now, I've already got another actuator. You'll receive your actuator in a closed position, so the shaft will be all the way in. Now, we need to extend that shaft out to about 1220, 1225. We want it a little bit short. And then we pull everything together to get your pin back in. So if we just lie this down, we can now hook up these wires. So we're going to run this actuator out of the machine to accomplish what we want to do. So red to red, black to black, like I said. These will only go together one way. Which is that way. Might just need something under the body here just to hold the shaft up as it comes out. I know this is a fairly long-winded, just get rid of this, sorry guys, a long-winded video, but that's just the way it is. So by having a locking tape measure, you can just sit here and watch it. So what we want to do, what's going to happen is this is going to want to extend out when we start the machine up. We're going to let it run out to about 12:20, and then we're going to stop the machine. So we can turn our e-stops on. We can safely operate the machine. It's going out now. So it only moves fairly slow, so you can stand over the top of it and get a pretty good eye on it. Like I said, about 12:20-ish, somewhere in there. Disconnect all that. Feed that back up in there. So that's out of the way. Now the first thing we'll do is get our bottom pin in. Like so. Now, as we spoke about, depending on what's happened, you can either push the whole assembly down and line him up, like that. So I've just got my foot on the bolt. So I've just pushed that assembly down to get that where I wanted it. Now if that assembly were all the way down for some reason and you couldn't move it any further, well then you could use the strap and then actually pull the thing together like I talked about. So now we can get rid of our strap. In this case, we've got nothing here. Now the block of wood's also good if you're out in the actuator, there was no weight under it. You put your block of wood up under it, and then you can leave it with a screwdriver and get your pin out, and then it'll just sit on the block of wood. And then you do the same sort of hole measurements, run your actuator, probably in this case a bit long, and then you can lift the cage up to get your bolt in. So depending on your situation, you're just going to have to work out what situation fits what you're going to do. So we've got that back in. I want to get rid of, like I said, the strap and the blocks of wood. Make sure you put your circlips back on. So one top, one bottom. We want to obviously connect up our actuator. So now I'm not running through every single thing with yous. Make sure this gets zip tied back up. Don't leave that just floating in there. That'll get caught in something so maybe at least a couple around there like that. So make sure your circlips are back on, your pins. So now you go back through, put your top hat back on. I'd probably leave the back off until you've tested the machine. Make sure that the new actuator that you've put in there is fixed your problem. In this case we're right, she's going up as you can see. We might just let it go all the way up, that's where it needs to be in the end. Go around, put your back on, tighten all your screws up. As I said, make sure all your tools are out and that everything is tidied up. And that should be the job fixed.